Discipline is like the skill of an artist that cultivates and refines the skill simply out of the deep desire and delight to create more. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today I was looking in the discussion board. We have this awesome discussion board, and there have been so many wins. I'm not going to use their names because I don't have permission to use their names, but I just have to tell you that the wins are fantastic. One of the moms in there was sharing that she had gone to the park and she'd been struggling with getting her child to leave the park. I know we can all relate. Leaving the park is so hard for our kids. They do not want to stop playing. They want to stay with their friends. They just want to be outside. I get it. They don't want to come back. So we were dialoguing about it in the discussion board, and I gave her some ideas, and she said, we went to the park again today, and I made sure I spent intentional, and then she does all caps, intentional time at the end with her, which is one of the things I suggested she do with her daughter. And we sat and we talked about acorns and rocks that she had found. We discussed which ones she was going to take home, and that when her sister came back from walking, it was going to be time to go. And then she said, sister came back. I said, okay, let's get our baby acorns. And she wanted me to help her pick them up. She was tired. And we went to the car and left. So great. So great. She's like, I would say this is a huge win. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And then there was another one that came in that she was talking about how she hadn't been feeling well and her daughter had come home and it was just a perfect storm. I'm not feeling well. The daughter's coming home. She's crying because she got caught talking when she wasn't supposed to. And normally, she said, my brain would immediately start thinking things like, this is pretty cut and dry. We just don't talk next time. But she said, I kept that to myself and said I listened with her and I stayed with her and reminded herself that sometimes when things don't work out that she feels discouraged and upset too. And she was celebrating herself which is huge, because she knows that in her habits, she talks too much and she's trying to be quiet and listen and honor the emotions her daughter is going through instead of discounting them. So that was a huge win. And then on office hours this week, it was from a mom who's been working with me for a little while, and she's been so amazing, understanding the challenges that she's had and the way she's lost her temper and been really short with her kids, and just has been committed to figuring out how to calm herself down. And her son at bedtime the other night, she said, was washing his hands and they were getting ready and doing all the nightly things, getting ready for bed. And he said, Mom, thank you so much for not yelling anymore. It was a beautiful moment that she had, such sweet validation for all of the work she's been doing. So I'm just loving what's happening in the pivot. Oh, and also one more thing. If you have a second and you've been enjoying this podcast, if you could take 30 seconds and leave a review, that would mean so much to me. I love creating value on this podcast. I love getting it out to parents and helping them understand the essence of Connect Method Parenting. And one of the ways that the podcast gets out to more people is if there's more reviews. That's how they decide if it's worth sharing with other people who are searching up parenting stuff. So I know it's a pain to leave a review, but if you could do that, I would love it so much. All right, let's jump to this live training from about a year ago. I want to mention before we jump into today's episode that I'm going to be talking about seen and heard and stop, drop, and roll, which if you're a visual learner like me, you might want to go over to my book, Connect Method Parenting, and look at page 155 and 165. 155 has a seen and heard diagram on it, and 165 has a stop, drop, and roll diagram on it. And if it's helpful for you to see it in a visual form, just pop over to the book. You can get it on Amazon. You can get the Kindle for, I think, $1. And you can pull up that page and see the diagram. Section 3 or part 3 of my book is where I talk about the entire seen and heard framework. Today, we're just talking about see. I touch a little bit on set, which is setting a limit and staying with some big emotions. So enjoy this overview of just the first couple of steps of seen and heard. Seen and heard is like a sandwich. If you pull up the diagram, There's a top and a bottom piece of what I like to think of as bread. You always need those. You start with C, you always end with bridge. And then there's some inner ingredients that you get to pick and choose depending on the situation. There's set, there's stay, there's pivot, there's direct, there's play. And so those you mix and match as needed for the situation. You can read all about it in my book. I've talked about it in different ways on the podcast. If you work with me inside of Pivot or CMP Mastery, you know what I'm talking about. This will be a good review. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we're going to just dive into C, which is the very first thing I recommend doing before you set any limit, before you give a direction. And then the stop, drop, and roll is a deeper dive into C, how we can see the other person and interface with them in a way that hopefully establishes a working relationship. But before we dive into this episode, which is a live workshop I taught a while back, I just wanted to mention that you can look at the diagram form of both of these things that I'm talking about today, which if you're visual, might be really helpful. All right, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode.
I wanted to start with a poem today. This poem just really spoke to me about what we're talking about today. So there's no title to it. Well, I call it the tear catcher, but he doesn't actually have a title for it. And it's going to be included, I asked his permission, and it's going to be included in the Connect Method parenting workbooks that I'm sending out to you very soon. So that's exciting, but I'm going to read it today because it sets it up perfect for what we're talking about. It says, "You found me sobbing on the lawn and you asked why I was crying. I forced a smile and said, my heart keeps breaking. I expected you to try to talk me out of my breakdown. Instead, you simply touched my wet face with your open palm and my tears sunk into your soft skin like seeds. And suddenly, a small vine with pink blooms grew out of your wrist and it wrapped around me. And suddenly there were dozens of these little vines with these pink blooms sprouting out of you and swaddling themselves all over me. And suddenly the space that once existed between us became a garden of pastel mercy. And suddenly I heard a thunderclap inside of me. Suddenly every single tear I was hoarding started to downpour out of my eyes, down into the soil of your kindness. And suddenly you began to grow like a blazing sun, and the garden we were growing became thick and wild. Suddenly, I could only smell the flowering fragrance of peace that to me smelled just like lilacs, though I'm told it smells differently for everyone. And suddenly I could feel one of your vines slip in under one of my scars and wrap around my heart. Oh, this gets me every time. And suddenly I could feel the vine stitching my broken pieces back together. And suddenly the other vine lifted us both off the ground and up into the August sky. And suddenly we became tangled together in the jungle of paradise of connection that only exists between two trembling humans. Oh, my love, there are so many miracles that can happen when a teardropper meets a tear catcher. It causes a chemical reaction that makes every other element to gawk and gather. It causes a cosmic reaction that summons an angel to come and sing us love songs from the trees. Oh, empathy is my favorite form of magic. Sometimes the simplest of questions can grow a new Eden. Sometimes the simplest of acts of mercy can restart Genesis. Oh, my love, thank you for asking what was wrong. I love that poem. Okay, I wanted to start off with that because I feel like today, and we'll get to your questions as well. I see some coming in, but I wanted to start with that today because this idea of being present, seeing our kids, being seen, being noticed, being observed, being asked what's wrong, like, why are you crying? Those simple things are at the essence of creating an amazing relationship with ourselves. We can do that for ourselves, but really here in the context of as a parent with our kids. And so when I read that poem and I was listening to the imagery that he was using and this idea of the connection that grows between us and the warmth and the safety and the security that happens when we open ourselves up to just notice somebody. And I love how it says in the poem, which spoke to me, just this idea that we're not trying to fix, we're not trying to talk them out of it. We're coming into conversations or situations. We're really coming in with this openness, with this acceptance, with this allowing, with curiosity and compassion. And I love at the end, it just said, thanks for asking what was wrong, but not trying to fix me. And the idea of the vines like growing between them and healing each other, like that's the power of being profoundly seen and heard. And so as we talk about parenting, I want us to be thinking about the power of seeing, being seen in a way that heals ourselves and our children, in a way that allows the emotions, the energy, the behavior to bubble up and release so that the true nature of who we are and what we're about can be seen, can come out. So today I'm going to get to your questions, but I'm going to come to them in a little bit. I want to start with this because I think it's going to set the foundation for the answers that, especially for the questions I see, for the answers for those. So hold on, I'm going to get there, promise, and we will answer all of those things. This week, we're picking up where we ended last week. We were talking about big emotions and why kids feel that way and how important connection is for us to really be able to do anything. We know this intuitively with other adults. We would never push ourselves into a conversation or into a relationship if we didn't feel like there was some acceptance or allowance on the other person's part to be there, like they were engaging with us. We had a working relationship. But with kids, we bulldoze through it all the time. So we're talking about really noticing that and saying, am I creating that connection? And when it's broken, am I allowing myself to notice it and pause before bulldozing and to understand the importance of it? And I'm not saying be friends and don't have any boundaries or rules. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying, hey, what happens when we start to realize maybe how sometimes we push through when our kids are obviously sending out an SOS message to us saying, I am not doing okay right now. Like I can't even talk about that because I can't even think straight. So backing up. So how the importance of that, that's kind of what we talked about last week. So coming into this week, I wanted to talk about, pick up where we left off and dive into the seeing of the seen and heard approach, the way we talk about interacting with our kids, what we're replacing consequences and rewards and bribes and ultimatums and timeouts, what we're replacing those tools we've been using, those older, outdated tools that I feel like don't really breed the warmest, safest connection, what we're transferring in on that or replacing, that is the right word, replacing. This is one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Gordon Neufeld, who is an amazing, amazing developmental psychologist and theorist. And he says, unconditional parental love is the indispensable nutrient for the child's healthy emotional growth. The first task is to create space in the child's heart for the certainty that she is precisely the person the parents want and love. Then the child can be ornery, unpleasant, whiny, uncooperative, and plain rude, and the parent still lets her feel loved. So a lot of the work here we do is talking about all the different components that go into creating this kind of presence with our kids. Right? We've got to be clearing up our own brain. We've got to be inspecting our thinking and our belief system and our interpretation of their behavior and their emotional outbursts. We've got to be thinking about the importance of what we're bringing to the table because our kids will still be kids. They're still immature. They're still developing. They're still growing. So they're going to have those emotional immaturities inside of them. And then we might have some of our own emotional immaturities we're bringing from hurts that we had or little incidences that got programmed in our subconscious brain saying problem, fear, whatever. So we have our own stuff that we're working through. They have their stuff. How do we come together and be able to provide this unconditional love that we want? So we have that on the table, and don't use this quote against you. Don't use it to shame you, nothing like that. I'm just throwing it out there because I think he says it. All the components that I want to say so beautifully, so succinctly. And the idea, I think, as I read this, one of the ideas that comes up for me is that, of course, I have unconditional love for my children, but sometimes if I'm not in a good place or if I am not interpreting their behavior well, it's not really showing. It's not really evident. It's not the thing that's coming to the surface. It's frustration that's coming to the surface. So it's hiding my unconditional parental love. So I want to get into a practice of cleaning the windows or the whatever you want to call it so that the unconditional love that I have for my child can come through, even if I'm having to set a limit, even if I'm having to deal with some undesirable behavior or some really big emotions that are triggering for me. How can I make sure that the compassion, the love is coming through and the firmness, and I'm balancing those out? That's usually very off balance if we haven't done our own work. We're so up in arms really because we have our own nervous system reactions. We're into fight or flight or fawn or freeze ourselves. And so we're not able to really show up that way. So think about this. I love this quote, so beautifully said. And I'm going to go on to this next thing about discipline, because one of the things that we talk about is replacing and shifting and transforming. And I know, at least for my brain, when I started trying to really evaluate and get curious, I tried to use a lot of willpower and discipline. And I think I was a little confused. So this is the definition that I love to think about when I'm thinking about discipline. And it says, discipline does not mean doing something hard that you do not like. I got to be thinking about this terrible behavior differently, or I've got to forgive myself, but I was awful when I yelled last night or something, or I've got to exercise. There's a great one that we use, discipline, I think in a way that doesn't serve us. So discipline doesn't mean doing something hard that you don't like, pushing through. It's not that. Discipline is like the skill of an artist that cultivates and refines the skill simply out of the deep desire and delight to create more. It's not the definition in the dictionary, but it's my definition. I love it. And I like to think if I'm trying to shift something or change something, instead of having it come from this really place of lack or insufficiency, it's coming from a place of creation and imagination, this deep desire and delight to create more. For me, it's more beautiful relationships, trusting relationships, more patience, all of these beautiful conversations that I want to have with my kids. So just throwing it out there. I love this definition, and think about what you think. Would that be a fit for you for discipline? Would that help you as we're moving into more and more flipping the script so that we can change the way we interact with our kids as a parent, and how we discipline, how we help them and train them and teach them and help them fulfill their potential? So here's the seen and heard approach. It goes back to really this innate human need we have to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, to be, like the poem said, to be cared for, but not fixed. And I think as parents, as we're interacting with our kids, we sometimes forget the cared for part, and we overemphasize the fixed part, and we don't trust as much as we would like to, because, and for good reason, we've been conditioned in society. It's been passed down from generation. Everybody's been doing their best they can. So there's no shame, no harm, nothing like that. I'm just saying we forget sometimes that the power of seeing, the power of being with somebody, and we go right into just trying to fix them. A lot of times that comes because it's so uncomfortable for us to see them hurting, or to see them crying, or to see the behavior going the way it is. And so we want to change it. We want to make that go away so we feel better, because it's hard to just see them hurting. And we're retraining our brains here to say, hey, let's be okay with other people being humans, right? We're all in this experience. None of us are having this perfect experience, although I think it is perfect. It's just not perfect in our perspective sometimes of what we think perfection should be, what we think our lives should be, or our kids' lives or experiences should be. We don't think they should struggle in school or with friends or say something rude. And perhaps I'd like us to question that. Perhaps actually that's not true. Maybe that is exactly what they need to become and to learn, and maybe for them and for us. And we can navigate that together, and they can grow into their full potential. So see and bridge are the end caps, with the middle things being able to be used: set, direct, play, stay, in any order and in any combination as needed. Now, this is not just something to be used when there's off-track behavior. It's definitely applicable to building a relationship, growing, and making people feel more seen and heard, whether things are going off track or whether things are going great, and you're being intentionally proactive about the connection you're making. It's bi-directional, which I think is so powerful. One of the things that has just really stood the test of time. So today we're going to talk mostly about the C, which is always what we start with. And then within it, I've parsed this out, and I call it the stop, drop, and roll. It just basically is taking C and zooming in, magnifying it. So stop, drop, and roll. The brief version is stop and listen, drop into your body, which means get present, and roll with it. Don't resist it. But taking it even another layer deeper, stop, which is my favorite one. They're all great, but my favorite one, it's the first step, is see the other person. So I wrote down what stop, C for S, the for T, other O, person. See the other person. So instead of rushing in and seeing the behavior or seeing the emotion or seeing the chaos or seeing the mess or seeing whatever our brain wants to see, the problem, we're seeing the person, we're seeing the child, we're honoring them, remembering how amazing they are. So see the other person. Then drop is don't react, observe patiently. So we're going to give ourselves a pause, take ourselves out of the drama for a minute and not react, just observe it patiently. And then roll is relax, open, listen, learn. And those are really the steps that we need to go through, especially if there's a problem going on, especially if our brain's like problem, behavior, problem, emotion, stop. These 3 steps that are sub-steps of C are what we want to do before we take any other steps. And then there's a question, this goes into stay, which we're not going to drop into today, but the question is this emotion or situation need more compassion, understanding, or listening? If that's the case, if it just needs more compassion, understanding, or listening, then we're going to stay. We're going to stay with the emotion, the situation, until they're ready to move on. So this allows us to get present, to observe, to listen, to learn, and to allow ourselves to understand, okay, next step is what? So what I want to talk about is the rewards of staying, which is really a return to safety. So if your child's having a difficult time, if they're having really big emotions, if they've maybe had some really tricky things happen in their lives, and this goes on, Tina, I'm seeing your question. So this is going right along with answering your question. Let me just read see if there's any other parts. Yeah. So it sounds like your little kiddo, your 5-year-old, is having a lot of emotions come out. Yeah. And I love what you did. I didn't want to lose it. So dad switched places and she punched him. She's 5. I don't even know. Yeah. So we're going to tap into all of those things. This is like addressing your question specifically. So keep listening. And if you have more questions, follow-up questions, let me know if this doesn't answer it. When your child, some of what you're talking about is seeing and staying. And so we're going to focus more on seeing. They overlap everything.
I want to interrupt this episode to tell you about the No Yell workshop. It's a 2-hour workshop for just $7, 100% money back guarantee, where I'm going to teach you the biology behind why we yell and exactly what to do about it so that you can stop yelling for good. Join me on September 25th at noon Eastern, or catch the replay if you can't make it live. You're going to walk away with real knowledge and a customized plan you can start using right away. Go to cmp.works/yell to grab your spot. I'll put the link in the show notes. This is going to be the best 2 hours you spend on parenting. I can't wait to see you there. Now back to the episode.
Is interrelated. It's not isolated from each other. The benefits of seeing them, the benefits of staying with them when they have a tantrum, is that it allows them to eventually, if the hurt is piled in there, if they have a lot of layers, this might take multiple explosions to get it out. Their nervous system is purging and they don't feel safe, and they're reactionary, and they haven't been able to, they might still be in attack mode where the energy is having to get out of their body, but it's attacking, hitting, slapping. It's just like that. And a little bit of that can happen in like when they're just releasing too, but it's asking ourselves, like, how am I interpreting the behavior? What am I making it mean about the child? And just looking at that. In fact, I was just over at a friend's house, and I heard one of the other moms talk about one of her little people, and say, oh yeah, she's really mean. And I thought it's really interesting. Some of the labels or the judgments or just the way sometimes we are seeing our kids, the way we are interpreting their behavior, the labels we're putting on them. And I would just recommend that we just really question ourselves when we say things like that. I've done it too. So it's not a judgment at all of her. It was really interesting to notice and reflect on my own patterns that I've had. And just to say, what benefit does that do me or my child when I do that? Let me just back up. When your child has finished the tantrum, so we're going to go to that. And it's like I said, this could happen. And I've had this experience where it's not a one and done thing. It's not, our brains wish it was one big tantrum, let all the emotions out, but we're constantly going through life. So there might be new things that trigger us, or new things that our nervous system files away as dangerous that are causing us to have some pent up emotions. Or it could be that we have a lot of stored ones, and it might take some time. It might take lots of time. It might take months learning how to be there with them without the judgment. That is our work. It's tricky work. It's hard work. It's good work. It's fulfilling work. It's so empowering and freeing work, but it's real work. So when we have started to get to the place where our child can release the emotions, and we're saying in a really welcoming space about it, our children are freshly relieved of their upsets and are generally more relaxed, affectionate, flexible, and are usually free, or mostly free, of the irrationalities that they had leading up to outburst. Off-track behavior equals limit. So when your child's thinking has broken, when they're flying off the rails, when they are having the big tantrums, and when they're little, it's so much more obvious as far as like they're literally flailing on the floor. For teenagers, they're rolling their eyes at you, or maybe cussing, or just avoiding you, or going to their room and shutting their door. That's their version of broken thinking. So when our child's thinking is broken, that means she isn't feeling safe enough to laugh or cry or really even feel. And when this happens, off-track behavior is totally going to follow, because it's irrational thinking. Your child will do nonsensical things and unworkable things, like hurting the cat, or yelling at her sister for even just looking in her direction, or crying because you cut the sandwich the wrong way. So this is our cue to step in. She's showing you that her brain has gone haywire because her nervous system doesn't feel safe and connected. Not because they're mean, not because they're rude, not because they're defiant. It's just their brain has gone haywire. Their nervous system has said, I'm not safe, I'm not okay, something's wrong. And so the thinking goes offline, because when we go into fight or flight, we know this on some levels, but we don't always apply it to behavior or emotions in children or humans. The blood goes to the vital organs. It leaves the higher thinking of the brain. It goes into the basic survival. So this is when she's saying, hey, I need a limit. So your limit, get this goes right along with probably a lot of our questions, but Tina, right along with your question you asked earlier, your limit gives her something or someone to blow up at. so that they can release the upset feelings and return to a place of safety and peace and equilibrium. So for a child whose behavior is flaring, your gentle but firm limit is a gift. Now, they're not going to tell you, thanks, mom, for setting this limit. They're probably going to get more mad, but your no, or not now, or I can't let you do that, will become the focus of their upset. So your no, I want you to think about this. Your no gives them a point of focus to the nameless tension that has been driving them off track. So now she can let her upset come out and show itself fully. Does that make sense? We don't usually get this information. I wish we did. Just show herself fully. She can now let herself have that upset come up and come out. So if we follow this up, so we've seen her, we've done all the steps I just talked about, then we set the limit because we can sure tell that there's like, some unreasonable behavior going on here. We're not setting limit because there's something wrong with her or because she's out of control, being difficult. We're setting limit because she needs somebody to do it because she can't do it herself. And then we follow up the limit by staying close and listening. Then that's when the gift becomes complete. So she's going to have the chance, or he's going to have the chance to release the upset feelings and recover her sense of connection with you and with herself. So here is the trick. We need to set that limit without ourselves feeling like we're attacking them, or we're triggered, or we're frustrated. And this is when our work comes in. This is why so much of the content within Connect Method Parenting is about us understanding how to get to a place of open love, acceptance. So when we can set the limit without frustration or attacking, because if it's something that probably you've done as a parent or was done to you, we're humans. There is no blame, shame at all. We've all probably either done this to our children on accident or had it done to us because someone else was triggered. So I'm guessing you can relate on both counts. I know I sure can, but not because my parents weren't wonderful. They were amazing, but they're still humans. And so sometimes the emotions get elevated and we explode. We all do it. So here's typically what happens. Behavior goes off track. And we do one of a couple of things. Maybe we silently, or not so silently, hope from the other room that it's going to just go away. Maybe we wait for a few minutes and just ignore it. Maybe we say something like, you guys better stop it in there. I've done that. So we're trying to change it. If we think about the circle of like big emotions, when they start fighting, most of the time, if we haven't done this work, there might be some behavior our kids do. Maybe the siblings fighting each other, maybe leaving messes. You can pick your little trigger situation. So there might be things that are extra triggery for you for whatever reason. That's totally fine. Let's look at them. Let's see them. No judgment. So something's happened. And if we're in a place where it starts to build a little bit of frustration or angst or irritation or anxiety or anxiousness, whatever your picked emotion, your favorite top emotion is, and we're like, I cannot take this. For me, one of them was coming home from, say, I had finally gotten a chance to go out and run an errand and had a babysitter. And then I'd come home and the house was just destroyed. That was really, really, really triggery for me for a long time. I had to work really hard on that one. So don't be frustrated if there's ones that are just for some reason feel deeply embedded into your DNA. We need to notice what's going on in ourselves. So let's use the example of the kids fighting in the other room. So when I can't get them to stop fighting, when they're being unreasonable and they're not able to limit themselves and it's getting, they're out of control. Maybe they're being even saying things to each other that I'm just not okay with. Then I need a limit. But when I'm frustrated because they didn't change, that limit or that consequence is what I would have called it. A punishment is put in place from an angry, frustrated, or disappointed state. Whatever the case is, the adult came in and waited until they had been elevated to the place of anger or frustration, and then they stepped in. So most often, historically speaking, limits, and our brains associate these together. The limits are associated with an attacking energy, I call it. Like it could have been a physical attack, spanking, hitting, pulling someone's arm, yanking, or worse. It could be a verbal attack, which looks like blaming, name calling, lecturings, little tirades. It could look like a separation attack, which is where we're isolating them from us, banishing them, not really like you're banished, but like putting them in timeout, cutting them off, telling them they can't be in here, which is really difficult for us as humans. We're very much a relational species. We like to be with other people. It's really important to us. So when we're cut off from the people we love and depend on, it feels really hard. It's really painful. So people don't mean to do this. We don't mean to do it if we've done it as a parent. I know I certainly can look back now with so much grace and compassion for myself. I can see times where, as a child, maybe I have memories of it. And it doesn't mean that it was intentional or anything like that. Parents don't mean to hurt kids when they set limits. I truly, truly believe that as human beings, we're all doing the best we can. And we're trying to do what we think is right by the other human. We're trying to raise them. We're trying to help them step into their full potential. We're looking out for their best interests. Another reason I think we do this, or our parents did it to us, habit. What we've seen, it's what we've been exposed to. It's what society says we should do. We get in the heat of the moment. We just go into habit mode, fight or flight mode. We're not thinking straight. We're so triggered as the parent that we've flipped our lid. Our thinking brain's gone off. And so I know when I look back on, especially the first few years of parenting, because I had all 6 of my kids in 8 years. Like, I love it. I wouldn't change a thing, but it was a lot of little people all around. And I think I was in fight or flight mode 95% of the time. Messes became an attack on me. Kids saying no was interpreted as a lack of respect. I think back on those days and I was just so heightened. I was not relaxed. I was not as calm. I was not as patient, but it taught me a lot and it catapulted me to really reevaluate why and what I was doing. So both of these things can happen and would happen to me, and they would put me into fight or flight mode, like the kids not obeying me or there are lots of messes. And I can see now how that just triggered the heck out of me and just put me into fight or flight mode. And I was in a suspended rally in a fight or flight mode a lot of the time. And it took me feeling that terrible feeling before I was like, okay, let's do something different. So sometimes, depending on the situation, when parents attack, and I'm using attacking as like any kind of interaction we have with the kids that's fueled out of frustration. So they attack their kids, they're subconsciously, here's what I want to say first. Sometimes when we see examples of this was not my experience, but I can see this, that if we have as parents this idea that life is hard and it's going to be really difficult and I got to toughen you up, then sometimes parents can come a little bit more harshly with their children because they're trying to subconsciously prepare them for the mistreatments that the world is going to throw at them. So to try to toughen them up and to get them ready for the real world, they feel like they have to be really hard on their kids. So it's just really interesting to think about all of the different things that might be contributing to how and why we're showing up this way, because it allows us to have the ability to notice it from a place of compassion and love for ourselves. And when we can see, hey, I'm awesome. I really was trying my best. And when I did that thing, I can see now that when I yelled or when I put those harsh consequences in place, I can tell that now from my perspective that was not going to get me what I wanted, but at the time I was doing my best. So we want to look and get curious at ourselves and how we're showing up from a place of love and acceptance, because that's the only way we're going to change. You're not going to change by beating yourself up. So as I'm talking about these things, I want you to just settle into this idea that you've been doing your best. Your parents were doing their best. There's reasons and realities for all of the reasons and things that have happened, and give yourselves a break and understand that it's fine. Humans are imperfect. We're a bit messy. There's few interactions we have with each other that are neat and tidy. We would like them to be more neat and tidy than they really are. So parenting and all the things we have to do as parents is no exception to this. And learning how to do this dance of seeing and hearing our kids, learning how to set a limit from a connective place and firm place all at the same time, staying with them when they're so emotionally explosive, takes human interaction to a totally new level. We're entering a new way of being a human that's really accepting what humanity is. We're emotional beings. Emotions are actually the fuel that grows us up. We need relationships with other people to allow us to expand and grow. They're also the thing that challenge us to experience more emotions and have more growth. So they feel great, relationships do, and the world and the experiences we have, they feel amazing, but they can also feel very challenging. And we need the pull on both sides. That's why it's so important, though, as parents, we are showing up saying, hey, I want to do this in a more compassionate, loving way, but I also want to be a really responsible parent and help my children have parameters. I'm not here just to be willy-nilly. That's why it's so important. And it was so important for me to figure out how to set limits, how to really see and hear my kids, how to play with them, how to bridge any disconnection we might have. So we've got to set limits with our kids. They have parents for a reason, but a lot of us accidentally turned parenting into controlling. The Seen and Heard approach is a framework to cultivate amazing relationships with our kids that are tight, that are trusting, that are connected no matter what is happening. So that we can feel confident saying, okay, I am doing something, because we didn't even know in the past that letting our kids have these emotions come out, how to even do that, if that was even good. And what benefit was that? Was that indulging them? We didn't understand the dance. We thought it was passive or all authoritative. So we use seen and heard when things are great to grow and cultivate and really build that relationship. So they choose us. And we use seen and heard when handling challenging behaviors. So we know how to handle them without rewards, consequence, and punishments. So here is what I'm going to go into this C now. I know I did a little side check of the stay because I think it's important actually. I'm glad I did it because I think it's important for us to understand that what I'm saying, have your brain have evidence that what I'm saying is not like just play and kumbaya and sing and dance with them all day long. I'm not saying that. I'm saying let's balance this out and let's strengthen our thinking and our beliefs about ourselves and our kids in a way that allows us to show up in alignment with what we really truly feel about our kids. Let me give you some tools that are going to do that, because without the set, a lot of times our brains, the setting the limit, I call it just set, without knowing and understanding, I do have an element where we're going to set a limit. Your brain might be like, well, this just feels like nothing, passive. No, nothing could be further from the truth. So let me go through the C again, because it is the first and the fundamental step, and the step that if we can't do this because of where we're at, or our children are so dysregulated because of what's going on in their life that they can't even look at us in the eyes or connect, then we really need to slow even further down. So C, the 3 sub-steps that I'm talking about today are stop, drop, and roll. And I love this. I have this vision of being, I think in 2nd grade or 1st grade, I don't know, when the firemen came into the school and they demonstrated what to do in case of a fire and stop, drop, and rolls. I have this imagery. We were in the music room and I still remember they had us all roll down the middle. Hopefully you have some memory, but I think all of us are familiar with this stop, drop, and roll, some memory of being taught it or having it discussed. But even if you weren't, I think it's a super good analogy, because a lot of times what is happening in our brain when our children are going ballistic or having crazy shenanigans or fighting, or the teenagers are really pushing back and having a lot of attitude towards, our brains are like, fire, it's an emergency. Our nervous systems are thinking, put that thing out right now. So I love the stop, drop, and roll, because in my brain, it goes right along with what my natural brain wants to call whatever off-track behavior my kids are having. So stop, see the other person, drop, don't react, don't jump into the old ways, observe patiently, roll, relax, open. So we're relaxing our bodies, we're reminding ourselves there's not an emergency. If there is a true emergency, obviously go make sure everyone's safe. But really, this is not like the emergency I think it is. I need to relax myself so that I can have my higher thinking on, open myself up to the possibility that I might not understand what's really going on here, that I might misinterpret the scenario or the behavior, and listen and learn so that I can understand how I'm going to proceed. So we're going to get close and listen at first. This is the information gathering step. So we're getting down on their eye level. We're getting close to them. We're not saying it from across the room, and we're seeing what's going on. We're asking our kids maybe what's going on, but we're for sure just observing. We might ask a question like, why are you yelling? But only from a place of like curiosity. Not, I'm trying to get the data so I can figure out how to discipline you, how to fix you, really understand like, why are you yelling? Are you upset? Are you hurt? We're really trying to understand. Or why do you have to have that specific treat or that specific chair? And we're really genuinely coming with compassion and trying to understand what's happening. And then we're trying to help our children. So our focus is on trying to help our kids, and we're trying to keep our own upset in check for a moment. So to help our kids, we're going to need to focus on them, on their feelings, and understand if we're triggered, that's when we want to just make sure everyone's safe, do no harm, step out and get ourselves in a place where our brain comes back on. We're allowed ourselves to be human for a minute. We move through those emotions so we can come back level-headed. But if we are able to practice, and for a lot of us, we're going to get a lot of exposure, a lot of trigger training, as they might call it, to starting to retrain our brain, because they're probably having these off-track behaviors often. So we need to focus on our kids if we can. And in a very short period of time, maybe a minute or so, we can start to get an idea of figuring out what's happening. Why is the child having such a difficult time operating normally? And this is powerful. So I believe the real issue has been that for generations, we had the wrong parenting tools. And if we'd had better tools and support, the parents would have understood what was really going on and been able to support children better and been able to be more compassionate and firm But here's the truth. I don't really think it's been available. And that's okay, because I think we've been in the survival mode just to be alive. So it's just now that we're coming and we're furnishing parents with enough help and information about this, with the science and the neuroscience and the developmental psychology, all of the different things that are coming together and helping us really up leveling and stepping more into who we can be, our potential as humans, and specifically here as parents. So we've been trying our best. Like I said, we've floundered at times, and now we're here and we're realizing that when we respond, when we try to issue a consequence or stop the behavior from a frustrated place, and we have that kind of attacking energy, instead of there's no problem here, they're hurting. And if I'm feeling a little bit frustrated or agitated or nervous or whatever, there's something in here I want to look at, inside job. So every attack we do towards our kids hurts our child. We don't mean to. And just think every time someone comes and maybe yells at us or it says something to us, it can hurt. So, and it jams more bad feelings inside of us. And this interferes with the child's ability, like I said, to feel safe, to feel connected, to feel capable. It skews our ability, whether it's happening to us or our kids, just the human ability to exercise good judgment, to feel self-confident. So if we feel triggered and are frustrated, we want to make sure that our child feels safe, that the situation is safe, and then give ourselves a chance to be listened to laugh, to cry, to tremble, to storm until we come back to our highest thinking. And remember, our child is good and they're simply just having a hard time right now. So we've got to do our own work, which we're not focusing on how to necessarily do that for ourselves today on this call. We do that a lot here, and we will continue to do that because it's such an important aspect of the puzzle. It's an ingredient to this recipe, but we must be doing our own work so we're not easily upset by them. And so that we can step more into feeling calm, to feeling accepting, to feeling compassionate towards our children and towards ourselves, right? No matter what's going on. So this is how we begin to consistently see our child's off-track behavior as evidence that they're struggling and needing our help, instead of evidence that there's something terribly wrong. Now, after you've spent some time figuring out what's maybe happening, you've seen them, you've gone through the stop, drop, and roll phases, these are some questions that I'd love to leave you with today to be thinking about how you decide what to do next. So sometimes when I go in and I see, I'm like, oh, my child just needs more information. So first question, does my child need just information or help? Sometimes our kids just need some guidance and moral support. Maybe they don't know where their backpack is. Maybe they're hungry. Maybe they can't find something to eat. Maybe they're super stressed about a math test they have the next day, or someone said something unkind at school. It might surface that at least the initial thing that's causing them to be in an agitated state is that they're just needing information or help or guidance or support. So if that's the case, we can address that. Another question that I like to ask myself as I'm really seeing them and I'm thinking about, okay, what's the next step? And I've evaluated what do they possibly need is, does the task match the child? So if what they've been asked to do doesn't match their ability or their age or their skill, this could be a problem. So if we're expecting our 3-year-old or even our 14-year-old to last for a shopping trip to Target, we're going to be disappointed. We might be asking more than they're capable of. They might have been capable, the 14-year-old might have been capable of it yesterday, but today they're not capable of lasting respectfully at a Target trip. So if our 16-year-old who's been struggling with school for like maybe the last few months and now has up to an hour of homework every night, they might be likely to fail. He's going to need a lot of staying, a lot of accepting, and some really good old-fashioned fun to make it through it so that he can regain his confidence and ease around homework. But it will take us really supporting him and being patient through it all to turn the corner on that. So is what's being asked of them matching their current ability today in this moment ability? If not, that's something we can address. We can adjust. We can see, okay, what do I do next? Do I need to stay with them and do the homework? Do I need to talk to the teachers? Do I just need to not worry about this? Do I need to change school if there was a homework thing? Or Target, how can I just leave them home? Because today it's just not the right day. And there might be other things to discover and see inside of that too. Another question I asked myself is, do I feel drained? There were so many days where my kids were totally being appropriate, but I was exhausted, stressed, or frustrated. And so just them running around the house, laughing and playing with each other in a very normal way put me over the edge. And so this is when often we revert back to punishments, rewards, timeouts, ultimatums, because I said so parenting. So what I have learned instead, let them know, because even though we have this information, there still might be days where something has happened that's weighing heavy on us. And so we're not as capable of handling the things that are being thrown at us. Maybe physically we're sick, or we had an injury, or we just got the IRS tax bill, or something at work just went terribly wrong, or we had an accident, or whatever it is, didn't get enough sleep. And we're just not feeling so capable. My brain, and if we're not aware of this, our brain will often try to blame outside things. The kids are really getting on my nerves, and it's easy to get on my nerves today. So instead of letting that happen, let the kids know that just had a stressful day, I have a headache, or I didn't sleep well, or I'm exhausted, or I'm whatever. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's not you at all. And there still might be something you need to do. They might be unsafe. They might be saying really mean things to each other, or throwing things, or climbing on things, or that you need to take care of. So you might still have to deal with the behavior. Make sure everyone is safe. Do no harm. Try to come up with as much compassion and firmness as we can muster up on that day. And the kids, depending on their age, may not give you a lot of time, or may not be very understanding of the difficult day you're having, about where you're feeling, or give you much of a break, even though you've had a rough day. It's good for us to remember that, how do we navigate this? Our child's job is to grow and become, and to play, and to discover, and to live their life fully. So we want to honor that and remember that she's not intentionally, or he's not intentionally trying to make our life hard. But if we're feeling drained, and we can keep everybody safe, and you can take some time for yourself, give yourself a little bit of time away to feel our emotions, to move through our own storms, to focus on what's getting us upset, that would be awesome, and not focus on trying to set limits or teach the kids right there. So another question I ask myself is the behavior unreasonable? If once I've leaned in, I've really gotten present and seen my child profoundly, and I have this sense that their behavior is unreasonable, then they're just off track and I need to set a limit. Then that's the next step. It's okay, I need to set a limit. That's what's happening. And that's what they need, is a compassionate and firm limit. So I'm going to transition from seeing them to setting this limit. So once we've decided that our child's behavior is indeed off track, then we want to move into that place. So here's a short summary. I want you to have this on your top of your head today. Your child is good. She or he wants to be loving, cooperative, and close to you. This is in the context of maybe them having a difficult day. When your child's behavior goes off track, it's because they're feeling disconnected. They're feeling hurt. When they feel hurt, they can't behave reasonably. So the firm limit goes right into you staying with them and letting them move through that emotion, which can get a little bit big. There's the gift, that the set followed by a compassionate and firm stay is the most amazing gift. So just let's keep practicing that. There's no need to attack an unreasonable or emotionally triggered child. That's not going to help us. That's not going to help them. It's not going to solve the problem. We might scare them into stopping. We might bribe them into stopping. We might ultimatum them into stopping temporarily. But what the child really needs is warmth and closeness in order to heal and change. The reason the 4 middle components are not in any particular order, because you might do see, play, then maybe that doesn't work, set, then you might do bridge, and they can be interchangeable. But I just want you to know that as we're interpreting and seeing the kids' behavior in a different way, it's going to change the way we use this tool. It's going to change the way we interpret them. It's going to change the way we feel about ourselves and our confidence level in dealing with whatever is happening. So practice that this week. Remember to be very patient and to be very compassionate with you. The more aware we become of where we've been and what we've done, sometimes the more uncomfortable we can become, the more judgmental of ourselves we can become. So be kind and compassionate with yourselves as you see what comes up for yourself, as you notice maybe some of the habitual parenting patterns that you are in, and just allow them to catapult you to be the catalyst for your change, to be the thing that allows you to grow into the best version of you. So be kind and gentle with yourselves and just experiment with this week. Thank you guys so much for being here today. So I'm so glad that was helpful. You're welcome. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming. See you guys later. Bye. Thanks so much for listening, you all. If you are ready to learn more about Connect Method Parenting, if you've been listening to the podcast and you think, ooh, I'd love to be able to implement this in my life and with my parenting more, then check out Pivot. It's my 8-week program where we deep dive into learning and implementing Connect Method Parenting so that you can take this information and transform your parenting journey. Head over to connectmethodparenting.com to find out when the next group starts.